Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Camp Counselor Damon Martin.
And I'm head counselor Patrick Guerra.
And Patrick, tonight we are digging into a movie that didn't get a ton of buzz when it came out. It actually did get a theatrical release, I learned this week. I had no idea about that. But it's kind of quietly become one of the underrated films of the year that, like, a lot of hardcore horror fans and horror influencers, friends of ours in particular, are saying, you gotta see this movie, you gotta check out this movie. It's becoming the word of mouth sensation. And while we do love to cover the big A-list movie releases, and I'll be honest, those tend to do better with our bigger audience, I do like to shine a light on smaller films. And when we did our big Patreon launch episode, I said, if you watch one movie this year that you haven't seen, you need to watch this one. I saw it on my own, just wanted to watch it. I loved it, and now we're reviewing it. Tonight, we talk about Marshmallow.
Gather around the campfire, kids, because tonight we talk Marshmallow, released in April of 2025, starring many, many people, including Maxwell Whittington Cooper as Franklin, Dylan Friedman as Sam, Max Molass as Dirk, Winston Vengapali as Raj, Samantha Nealon Trumbo as Lori, Kai Ketch as Pilar, Jordan Rea James as Caroline, Sutton Johnston as CJ, Paul Soder as Collins, and Q Lawrence as Morgan, Pearson Foad as Caswar, Alizia Rayner as Mom, Georgia Wiggum as Rachel, and Corbin Burnson plays Grandpa Roy. As you mentioned, Damon, written by Andy Greskoviak and directed by Daniel Del Purgatorio, we are talking Marshmallow, Damon. I know you're a s'mores guy because I am too.
You know, it's fun. So, can I ask this question before we really get into the review? Did you
Please.
ever figure out why it's called Marshmallow? Because I
Fuck
never
no,
did.
I have no fucking idea. I just assume it's called Marshmallow because it takes place at a summer camp.
Yeah, I assume as much. But yeah, I watched this movie and I enjoyed it, and I started telling people about it. So you need to see this movie; it's really cool. And then I kept telling them about Marshmallow, and then I thought to myself, why is it called Marshmallow? And I still have never totally figured that out. And I've read and watched as many interviews as I could find with the director and the writer, and I don't think they've ever explained it either. I was just curious.
Damon, sometimes in the process, you just name something. You're like, it's a summer camp thing. Let's just call it Marshmallow for now. You put it on hold and you go, we're definitely getting a better title for that. That's just a placeholder title. And then you just stick with Marshmallow and you go, well, yeah, it's at a camp. So we're just going with that. I think that's what happened here.
I mean, I know you're not a fan, but like, why was Barbarian called Barbarian? I still have no idea about that either.
I rest my case, Damon. Nobody knows why it was called Barbarian. Not even Zach Kreger knows why it's called Barbarian because there was no plan there.
Yeah. So this movie, as we mentioned, is, it's a lower budget horror film, but it is set in a summer camp. And I guess the best way to describe this movie, now I'm giving forewarning to our audience, our faithful listeners that listen every week, regardless of the title, because I do understand that some of these smaller, more independent horror films don't get the same audiences when we review the Conjuring movies. I get it. I understand it. But I like to shine a light on these movies sometimes because they do kind of get lost in the mix, especially when you find a fun one or a good one or one that actually stands out. And this movie, I can't remember. I want to give credit where credit's due, but I want to say maybe it was either our friend Slasher Talk, Justin, or it was Chuck, your movie guy. One of them had done a review on this months ago, and I was like, all right, I'm in. I want to see what this is. And so I watched it, and I was like, wow, this was really impressive. But the best way I could describe this in two ways. One, I want to give you a forewarning that the vast majority of this review is going to take place in spoilers because the real depth, the real meatiness, the goodness, so to speak, of this movie requires spoilers. And I don't want to do that for our audience, but I will say the best teaser I can give you about this movie is it is a summer camp slasher, sort of, with a big twist. And when I say a big twist, I understand that can set expectations abnormally high. You think of M. Night Shyamalan, and we talked about this with other movies before where Zach Kreger was an example of that, where you get drawn into making everything very twisty and you can get too involved in the twist and not enough in the storytelling. But this movie requires you to get to a certain twist in this movie where you're like, oh, wow. And I think without spoiling it, I just have to say it's worth the price of admission. It's all I can tell you about it because I don't want to ruin it for people, which is why I'm telling you now the vast majority of our review is going to end up in spoilers. But this is a really fun, well written, well plotted, well acted, well directed movie.
It's one of the good ones, Damon. It kind of reminds me of how last year we sang the praises of Red Rooms. It was one of those things where it's kind of this very similar situation where a lot of people were talking about it. You saw it, I hadn't seen it yet, and finally it was just a breaking point where it's like we have to talk about this movie. As I mentioned in the intro there, it opened in April. It had a limited theater release and then it went straight to video on demand, and it's been going ever since. And the buzz has been real. I've had to swipe by a lot of videos on social media because they talk about Marshmallow, and I didn't, you know me, Damon, I don't want to know nothing. I ain't looked up nothing. I didn't know about nothing until I sat down and got ready to watch it the night before we recorded this podcast. And I think that's the way to go. You got to do that with this. And it is a highly original idea. The fact that it's set at a camp should not make you think, "Oh, just another camp slasher, huh?" It's really not. It's something else. It's a different experience. I will give this out. And because this was a an overarching theme in this movie that I thought was great. And that was bullying. Bullying is a big part of this. Now, you don't even have to watch camp horror movies to remember that a lot of the 1980s camp movies, even if they were comedies or dramas or just standard stories, they had to do with bullying and kids dealing with bullies at camp. It's like a staple of like the camp movies. Even horror camp movies have bullies in them, and usually the bully gets a machete through the dome. So that's one of those things that like you can get from this movie very quickly, very easily. You can understand, oh, okay. So on its surface, it's about how you get bullied. And you mentioned in the intro, for those who didn't listen to the intro, Andy Reskoviak talked about writing his experiences in this one just in his instance, a hell of a summer where grandpa dies and then he has to get a surgery and then he's got to go to camp all at once. It's just sometimes you have a shitty summer as a kid. I've certainly had a few in my day, Damon, where I was just like, wow, that really sucked. And I'm coming of age and I've got to deal with shitty people and shitty kids my age who don't care what I've been going through. Something about that is incredibly nostalgic all on its own. I don't know. I've never clocked it, Damon, but bully movies were a big thing growing up. I think there was bullies in every movie. Revenge of the Nerds, for all its faults, was about a bunch of people getting bullied. Breakfast Club was about people getting bullied. These were staples of my youth. And so I was curious if that was something that you were like, yeah, I can really latch on to that.
It's funny you say that because I think any kid who grew up and felt different in some way, shape, or form probably dealt with bullying on some level. For me personally, like I remember when I was a kid, I was a little kid. I was 5 foot tall going into high school. I was a little chubby kid going into high school, and I got picked on. Like everybody got picked on. And then between my freshman and sophomore junior years, I can't remember which one when it happened, I sprouted. And I got to be 6 foot and eventually 6'3". Now, when you're 6'3", suddenly people aren't as quick to mess with you or pick on you or whatever. You kind of got this. So, like, that was my growing out of it period when I became, like, big enough and strong enough to defend myself and basically told people, like, stop fucking with me. But I went through it. Absolutely, I went through it. And what's funny is I remember years ago, I think I've told this story on the show before, but I went to a very, very small high school. Like 95 was my graduating class. So everybody knew everybody and everybody knew everybody's business. And there was one kid in school in particular who always wanted to fuck with me. And I one day snapped and like threw him against a set of lockers and basically told him if he does it again, we'll put him through the locker. But years later, I was on Facebook and he actually reached out and apologized. He's like, I'm so sorry, man. I was a shitty person. I was going through a lot. My dad died, and I took it out on people, and you were one of them, and I'm really sorry about that. And we were cool. We don't really talk now, but I was like, I appreciate that, like, you know. But I also, there's part of me, it's also like I understand that's just kind of a coming of age thing, and what's crazy is when you and I were growing up, we always thought we're children of the 80s, but really we're kind of children of the 90s. We kind of came of age in the 90s.
Yeah.
And bullying was definitely real in that time period, but it didn't get dealt with at the same level it gets dealt with now. Now, I'm not saying bullying doesn't happen. It absolutely happens
It
on
sure
so many
does.
different levels. But people are so much more reactionary to it. At least I hope that's the case. I don't have children, but I do know, like, seeing enough stories about it online, that it does seem like people are much more hyper aware of bullying. Like, it still happens, but people are more aware of, like, hey, we got to put a stop to this kind of thing. Back when I was a kid, they're just like, stand up for yourself, or, don't let him pick on you. Like, that was literally all they did. Like, they just, don't let him pick on you. Great, thanks for the advice. That really helped me out. I just watched this crazy documentary on Netflix called Unknown Number, the high school catfish. And there was, like, bullies in that. And that's a story that, like, took place in, like, 2022. Like, this is, like, 3 years ago, and there's, like, a bully in that story. So bullying still happens, but I think people are more aware of it now. And they are more aware to at least attempt to put a stop to it. To what degree, I don't know how that goes, but I do know, like, people are just aware of it now. But I think we all went through it. And this movie deals with it. It's kind of funny because even I don't know what the year setting this movie is. They don't say. I would imagine it's just 2025. Like, when you don't say and you look at, like, modern technology and stuff in the movie, you just kind of assume it's present day. So I assume this movie takes place in 2024, 2025. But the way they kind of deal with the bullying in this movie feels much more of our era.
It does. So I brought it up.
Like, tough it out. You'll be good. It's cool. It'll get better. And no offense, but that's shit. Like, that's shit advice. Like, that's the word. Like, my advice was always just don't let him pick on you. Great, thanks. I'm glad you solved that problem for me, mom or dad or teacher or whoever. But it seems like this movie deals with bullying the way we dealt with bullying in the late 80s, early 90s, and 90s when we were growing up.
That is highly astute from the master of storytelling himself, Damon Martin, because that is true. I think that's what struck me about it, and that's why I brought it up, because I was like, wow, like, this would not fly today. My wife is a teacher, and we know about, like, I actually she keeps me abreast of what's going on. Let's just put it that way, in a very how can I put it, ethical way. I don't get names and stuff, but she talks about incidents that happen at school that she has to deal with all the time. And so, and it's always very minor. And I've even noticed just having to be around children, which, Damon, I did not volunteer that. Okay. I just now am in that situation where I'm around these children all the time. And I see that kids tend to, especially smaller kids. And the kid in this is Morgan. And I would guess he's around 10 to 12 years old. He's somewhere in that range. I'm not quite sure. But those kids are, like, weirdly way nicer than when we were that age. Well, I think we were complete psychopaths when we were small. Like, everybody was insane. I remember, and then my next follow up is, talking about summer camps and all that shit. But I just remember kids in, like, fifth and sixth grade, which I feel like that's around Morgan's age here, were absolutely psychopaths. I mean, just purely psychopathic. We just like the Devil's Rejects level. Like, what the fuck is your problem, Jesus Christ? And then, Damon, and then you hit puberty, and then it goes from, like, oh, you're a psychopath, to now you're a pubescent psychopath. So we have to be careful that you don't kill somebody. Like that. That's kind of just how I got through, like, elementary school and middle school, constantly just literally fearing for my life. I wasn't, like, terribly bullied or anything like that, but I had some pretty serious incidents. And certainly a lot of kids that I was around had incidents where, like, they had to move schools and shit. It was like, oh, I can't even go to the school anymore because the threat of violence from these kids. I mean, it was some weird fucking days, Damon. It was weird fucking days. But, and here's something I'm curious of, because you grew up in kind of, the East, Midwest area, roughly Ohio area. Did you go to summer camps?
I never did. Never went to a summer camp. Never went to a summer camp. And it's funny because as a kid growing up watching slasher films like Friday the 13th, I was always like, I didn't want to go to a summer camp because I watched Friday the 13th. You'd have to be a pretty sick twist to want to go to summer camp because of that. But like that setting, like I was so familiar with that setting as a kid between that and Sleepaway Camp and all the other camp slash of that era. I did get a little jealous. I never got to go to a summer camp. But no, we never. The only thing we ever did was we had Vacation Bible School, which was like a
Oh,
week of
okay.
like which was like a week of like church and but like so clearly, if you've listened to the show for more than one episode, you know I'm not religious. I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just saying like I'm an atheist. And but growing up, you know, I grew up in a very very Baptist town, and Vacation Bible School was like one part church, which it was. They did give you like the ministry and stuff in the morning, but then the rest of the day was like barbecues, and you'd play volleyball, you play basketball, you play baseball. It was basically like a summer camp, but you went home every day. You didn't stay there. You went back
Sure.
home and then you went back the next morning. So it was like an all day kind of thing for like a week or 2 weeks. I can't remember. So that's the closest I ever came, but we never camped out. We never went to an actual summer camp where I was away from home for like a month or anything crazy like that. So I never experienced that.
Damon, I can't even believe this as a kid from the inner city that I got one thing up on you is that I did go to summer camp just once. I just went once in sixth grade. We call it sixth grade camp out here. I don't know what they call it out in the Midwest. But in sixth grade, I don't know how it happened, but my parents must have had enough money that year to send me, and I went, and with a full brain, full of Friday the 13th knowledge, where I was just like, so when do we get to the part where they try to pretend like they're camp slashers and shit like that? Like I was waiting for that to happen, and it never did. But what I bring that up because the depiction of summer camp as a kid in this movie highly accurate. But the only difference was I was actually having a blast. I really had a lot of fun overall with my summer camp entirely. It was only 1 week. It was I think a lot of kids like in certain places go like for weeks, 3, 4 weeks or something like that. I just went for one, but I had a blast and it was so much fun. And yeah, at sixth grade, which is roughly around the age of these kids, I was out there in the wilderness having fun, shooting arrows, telling campfire stories and all this shit. And then we stayed in cabins at night and we told ghost stories and all that. And I'm like, damn, dude, that was actually a lot of fun. Like I kind of just forgot about it until this movie because it depicts it very accurately. That's the part that I thought was really cool. I was like, yeah, this is how it was for me. It was not like how how 80s camp slashers portray it, where it's like pure dog shit like real bad and garbage. It's like this movie portrays it where it's like, yeah, this if things aren't going wrong, it's fine. But of course we're watching a horror movie, so things do go wrong. And I even asked my wife, I was like, did you go to sixth grade camp or anything like that? She's like, no, I never did. I'm like,
Now,
how the hell is this kid from an inner city is the only guy I know that went to camp?
when you went to camp, was it just like were you like in terms of like the people there? Was it just a lot of people you didn't know? Because I think one of the biggest benefits of me when I went to Vacation Bible School, it was me and a bunch of kids that didn't go to my school. It was other
Oh, I
surrounding
see.
schools. So like it was almost like I got to be a different person. Like I wasn't, and I remember at that point like there was no bullying. Like it was literally a good experience. Like I'm not a religious
Right.
person, but it was an awesome experience. But it was also I got to kind of become a different person because I didn't have the same
Hmm.
weight pulling me down at school. Because at school I was kind of the nerdy kid. I was the smart kid. You know what I mean? I always got good grades and stuff. And at Vacation Bible School, I was with kids from other schools. So like they didn't know me. They didn't know my history or anything. So like we were all just kind of getting to know each other and there was really no bullying. There was no hierarchy of like this is the popular kid, this is a football player, this is whatever. So it's kind of nice. You kind of get to become a different kid. Now I don't know when you went to summer camp, was it kids you actually went to school with or was it a whole different group?
It was a mix. So I think because like there were so many sixth graders that actually from my school went, and then we mixed in with other schools. So you couldn't really like change your identity or anything like that.
Yeah.
Not that I was looking to do that at the time, not particularly, but I know what you mean, where it's just like, oh, I'm kind of free from the trappings of this school. Like I had a couple of
Yeah.
friends that I was friends with outside of my school, and I was kind of I could be edgier or as edgy as I wanted to be with those kids, and no one was going to tell on me because that we didn't go to the same school.
Yeah.
Like I remember bunking everybody, I'm pretty sure in my cabin were from my school. I think it's how they bunked everybody. It was like, oh, in Cano Elementary, all you guys are in one bunk, like bunk area, and then the other school was there, and the other school was there.
Yeah. So, but and the reason I bring that up is because I think what Marshmallow does really effectively is it is kind of like what you went through. It's kind of a mix because our lead character Morgan goes to summer camp very much unwillingly. He's very much an introvert. He doesn't really have
Yeah.
friends. He gets bullied at home. There's some local neighborhood kids who are kind of cruel and mean to him. And he's not super excited about camp, but his parents and his granddad are like, come on, it's going to be awesome. You're going to have a great summer. And he goes there, and the one kid from his neighborhood that he knows is there who's the bully. He's like, of course this sucks. But the good news is there's also other kids there who don't know him, who don't have never met him before. So it's kind of like a mix of kind of what you're dealing with,
Yeah.
except I guess to a lesser extent, because there's one kid there he knows who's a bully and a little dickhead, and then the rest of the kids are different. They're not. He doesn't know them, so it's a little bit more like what you dealt with.
Yeah, it is, and it's funny. The bully in this movie is this kid named CJ. He literally looks like my oldest son. If my oldest son was like 14 years old, like because this kid, the kid's like a little bit older than like all the. That's another thing too. Like when you're a little kid and you got to be in the you got to be playing the game with an older kid, and the older kid knows you're the little kid and he wants to push you around and shit. And I'm like, oh, but the bully looks like my son. Like that's fucking lame.
But I think this movie, like in terms of because we talk about this all the time, being accurate with the way you're portraying a movie, right? Like if you're right, like I've said openly on this show, like the reason in my screenplays I write for a certain kind is because that's the kind of people I know. Like I feel like my scripts, my writing tends to be more like Rob Zombie's because I grew up in a gritty, grimy, poor,
Yeah.
poverty-stricken area. I don't know what it's like to grow up with money. I never had money. Didn't have a dime to my name. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have no idea. We grew up on welfare. So like, I have to write characters that I know, that I knew growing up, that I was around because that was my youth. And we talk about that all the time. Like sometimes we watch a movie and like that just doesn't sound like what teenagers would sound like, or what kids would sound like, or what a woman would sound like, or whatever the case may be. And credit to the writer for this one because this one sounded genuinely like kids, and even to a different extent, the camp counselors, because the camp counselors in these
Yeah.
movies always have a certain type, which is there's always a camp counselor who really, really cares, who's like genuinely like is there to care about the kids. There's always the disaffected teen who like doesn't want to be there and he's just like whatever, jump off the high dive, I could give a fuck. And then there's always the horny teenagers because they're there to
Yeah.
bone on their own time, not their way from mom and dad. And I think that's genuine. I didn't go to summer camp, but anytime you go anywhere with like teenagers, there's always going to be that like mix of like those kind of kids. And I thought like as far as my estimation, the accuracy was pretty close, pretty dead on.
That I'm so glad you brought that up. The camp counselors felt like the stock camp, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but the stock camp counselors from all my favorite Friday the 13th and just summer camp movies of the 80s and the early 90s, where it's just like it's that mix of like here's the straight-laced one, here's the one here's the jock who's super horny and trying to get laid the whole time. Here's the dope smokers. Like they really have a like a full mix of it. And so there's a lot of nostalgia that I think comes out of this. And we're obviously dancing around the story beats because it's too spoilery. But I'll say this to the audience right now. What I really love about this movie that we are about to start getting into is the sense of mystery. When shit starts to hit the fan in this movie, because it's going to raise a lot of questions, and that's what this movie does really well. Like, this is what I'm going to prime you with. It starts to make you ask questions. That's the purpose. You're going to go, I don't understand. Why is this taking place? That's the point. They keep leading you and leading you down this line in this movie through these steps. It's not, to me, at least in my opinion, when the mystery of it all starts, it doesn't feel like a typical camp slasher. It really doesn't. It's when like there's almost like a midpoint of the movie where things topple over and you're like, oh, okay, well now we're on the run. But you're still asking questions in a way. And this is why I think this movie has gotten a lot of buzz is because it really plays the camp slasher completely different. Once the shit hits the fan in this movie, you are asking questions the whole time. You are going, I don't get this in a good way. Why is this happening in a good way? what's happening next in a very good way. And then like someone will get revealed, something will get revealed, and it's almost just like another layer of the onion being peeled to reveal what's on the inside. So that's what's exciting about this movie. There's a lot of familiarity in the sort of structure of it and the template of it, but when it really gets going, Damon, this is not like any camp slasher I've ever seen.
And I mentioned earlier that this is a sort of camp slasher because it is sort of a camp slasher. And you know this by the trailer, and I played the trailer at the beginning of the show, so this isn't a spoiler. These kids go to camp and they tell them a campfire story about a doctor who will come after you if you're out past curfew. That's no different than any story you would hear around a campfire at any camp or anywhere else for that matter. And so, like that, they kind of put the fear into kids of like, you better be good or the doctor will come get you. And so if you're like, that sounds like every camp slasher I've ever heard. You're right. It does sound like that. And when I say there is a twist in this movie that you will not see coming, I do genuinely mean that. But the cool thing about this movie is there's like two or three other smaller twists that happen before that you're going to be like, hold on. And as you said so astutely, what the fuck is going on here? Well, hold on now. What is this? And I mean, as you said, I mean it in a good way. Like you're going to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Why is this? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Why is this character doing this? Why is this happening here? And not in a confusing way. You're like, this movie doesn't make sense. It all pays off. And to its extreme credit, this movie's a breezy hour and 29 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it a couple months ago for the first time, and I really, really enjoyed it. I started telling people about it. Like, you got to see Marshmallow. If you're going to ask me to recommend one offshoot, kind of, not talked about movie, not A-list movie to watch this year, watch Marshmallow. And then I watched it again last night to get ready for the podcast. And I watched it kind of late at night. I had a lot of stuff to do, and I didn't watch it till late at night. And I put it on, and I was like, oh man, am I going to get sleepy? Am I going to have to finish this in the morning? No. It was there and done, and I didn't even know it. And you remember we had this conversation when we recently reviewed The Conjuring 2. I watched The Conjuring 2 under similar circumstances. It was late at night. I knew it was longer. It was over 2 hours long, but I was like, I've seen this before. It'll be all right. I can make it through. And I openly admit I like The Conjuring 2, but about an hour into it, I was like, oh my God, is this still going? I paused the movie, like 55 minutes left. What the fuck? How's this?
There's a whole fucking movie left.
And I was like, all right. And I just kept going. Last night when I started Marshmallow, I was like, oh God, here, hour and 30 minutes. I'm pretty tired. Like I might watch half now and just finish in the morning. Breezy. Got done. It was over. I was like, wow, that was just really watchable. And it was an hour and 29 minutes. I didn't pause at one time. And I was like, that's when you know you made a good movie, when you're kind of concerned about it. Like, I know I'm going to get tired. I know I'm going to get sleepy. And I have seen this one before, so I can finish it tomorrow. I didn't want to finish it tomorrow. I wanted to finish it right then. I wanted to get to where I knew it was going. Because even though there is a big twist, there's a couple smaller twists I mentioned. This isn't a movie that I know I'm making a weird comparison. But it's like, for me, in a way, like I don't dislike Seven just because I know the twist.
Right.
Like, I know the twist coming in Seven. I've seen Seven dozens of times. One of my favorite movies. And I've said openly, I wish I could go back and see it again for the first time just to remember that reaction, because I don't remember seeing Seven for the first time. I know I did. I just don't remember it. But I don't dislike Seven just because I know the twist. This movie, when I knew it was coming, but I was like watching it the second time, I was like, I want all the details. I wanted to pick up on things I may have missed the first time around.
Yeah.
So this is a good movie that will give you that summer camp slasher vibe in a different way. And then when you get to the big twists and turns, A, you're not going to see it coming. B, you're going to be like, what is going on? And then C, when you actually get there, you're going to be like, oh. And then you're going to want to go back and watch it again to say, what did I miss the first time around? And it works. It just works on so many levels.
I'm really looking forward to. I have the rental still for like another, day or something. Like I have a 48-hour rental. I'm looking forward to watching this one more time. I'll probably watch it after we're done recording, just to see it now, knowing knowing how the twist works does not ruin this movie at all. It's actually gonna be a pretty good rewatch. And with regards to Breezy, I'm pretty sure a lot of people out there that we know have some sort of partner that they live with. My wife likes watching horror movies. There's one problem though. By 9 o'clock, she's snoring. She's out. And I'm somebody who can stay up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And so it was like we put the kids to bed. I was like, I got to watch Marshmallow because I'm doing this podcast. And she's like, well, I want to watch it. And it's already after 9 o'clock. And I already know. And she was just like, can we just watch it in bed just in case I fall asleep? And I was like, of course. Hour and 20 minutes later, Damon, she was still on the hook. She watched the whole damn thing. It was a good, interesting, engaging watch. She didn't snore through it once. She didn't fall asleep once, Damon. That's a hard feat in this house. She normally gets complete. She knocks out in the middle of a movie, even if she likes it. But this one was engaging enough. She stuck with it. I think Marshmallow is going to surprise a lot of people. It's one of those movies I'm glad we're kind of using our platform to push it a little bit because the smaller horror movies tend to actually be honestly better. This is better than The Conjuring 2, in my opinion, by a lot. But that's made for the masses. And by the way, did fantastic, did insane numbers. Conjuring 2 doing great. Marshmallow probably not doing numbers anywhere near that. Probably will never do numbers anywhere near what The Conjuring 2 is doing. But your support keeps very clever filmmakers and storytellers getting work. And these people that made this movie, they deserve the work. So please be sure and go check it out because Damon and I wouldn't be sitting here talking about this movie if we didn't think it was worth talking about.
Marshmallow won't earn a third of what it costs to make The Conjuring. Okay, so just like,
as our buddy Stephen Cognetti says, they probably had the coffee budget of The Conjuring 2 to make the whole damn movie.
Yeah. So with that being said, Marshmallow is available on demand right now. You can rent it. I rented it last night for like $6. I think you can buy it for like 10 or 15.
I rented it for $3 on Prime. Yeah.
Super cheap. You can rent it and watch it, but I'm telling you, it's worth your time. And I had so much confidence in this movie when we did our Patreon launch episode, our live episode. We had a couple of our friends on, Horror Fan Andy and Alexis Chainsaw Massacre, and I told them, I said, watch Marshmallow. If you don't like it, tell me. I'll pay your rental budget. If you don't like it, you genuinely don't like it, tell me how much you paid to watch it and I'll give you the money back. And I'm happy to say both of them said they enjoyed it and I don't need to give them a dime. So I'm very proud of myself that because they could have just been like, actually, I really liked it, but here, pay my rental fee anyways. But they did not. They both liked it. So that's how confident I'm telling you, like, this is a really fun, original movie. So check it out. We are now going to get into spoilers. And we always give you forewarning. I'm giving you like a triple warning right now because the way this movie ends is such a trip and such a like, oh shit moment that you do not want it ruined. So be forewarned. We are getting into spoilers right now. So if you haven't seen Marshmallow, if you can't tell by now, Patrick and I really, really enjoyed this movie. Go check it out, go rent it, and then come back, listen to the rest of the podcast. And also, if you want early access to this episode or any of our episodes, along with our Alien Earth recaps and some other cool shit, go check out our Patreon, patreon.com/rewind of the living dead. Couple bucks a month, doesn't cost very much, and you get to support our show, but you also get early access to episodes days ahead of time before we actually release them, and then all kinds of bonuses. We do bonus episodes that aren't horror. We do bonus episodes. We did a Final Destination series wrap-up that's only on Patreon. We do our Alien Earth recaps only on Patreon, and all of our actual episodes, like this episode, will be up days ahead of when we release it on regular Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those places. So, be forewarned, so check those out on patreon.com/rewind of the living dead. With that being said, Patrick, let's get into spoilers for Marshmallow. Should we just talk about the plot real quick, like the actual plot now that we can talk about it?
Let's do it, Damon.
So the movie takes place with this little kid, Morgan, who's getting ready to go off to summer camp. And right before he goes off to summer camp, he's very reluctantly being sent to summer camp. He's not going. He's being sent by his parents. And his grandpa tells him, hey, kid, you're going to have a great time. It's going to be a great summer. And he even gives him a Swiss Army knife and says, here, have a great summer. But right after that moment at dinner, his grandfather has a heart attack and dies in front of him. And it's a very traumatic moment for the little boy because he's like, oh, my God, my grandfather died. But still, his parents are insistent you need to go to summer camp. So his mom drops him off. And you can very much tell in that moment his mom is a helicopter parent. She does not want to let him go. She's hovering. But, some parents, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. You can just love your kid. And so Morgan gets to camp and he's not feeling it right away, and especially when he runs into the neighborhood bully named CJ, who is a little dickhead. and CJ bullies him left and right, and treats him like shit, and basically picks on him, beats him, more or less beats him up. Like, he's just horribly mean to this kid. But luckily, Morgan does run across a couple of like-minded kids, a couple other kids who are kind of picked on and outcast, and a girl actually befriends him, and he's kind of found his little friend group there. But at one point, CJ, basically says, "Hey man, I want to come talk to you. I want to, kind of smooth things over." He ends up chucking him in the lake after Morgan doesn't want to take a swimming test because he's terrified of swimming. He's never swam before. We'll find out more about why that is later. And he gets chucked in the water, and then CJ just beats the living shit out of one of Morgan's friends, and they drag CJ away, and CJ is basically tossed out of camp. He leaves camp at that point, and they got to deal with CJ's bad behavior. And amidst all this, they tell the story of the doctor, this campfire tale about this doctor who roamed these woods, and if you were out past curfew, he would take you and put you in his little lair basement and operate on you. And so never, you fear the doctor. Well, Morgan has nightmares. He has a tendency to have nightmares, and he has a nightmare. He wakes up, goes to the bathroom, and he actually sees this hooded figure wearing like a mask and full-on medical garb and gloves and everything, stalking through the woods with like a prod, like a cattle prod. And he's like, "Oh my God, the doctor's real! Holy shit!" And he goes and tells the camp counselors. They're all like, "Come on, Morgan, it's not. This is just it's in your head." And then the next night, the same thing happens, but this time Morgan investigates and follows, and he actually goes into like this basement area in one of the cabins, and he finds CJ chest split open, ribs on the ground, and he runs into the doctor. And this kid is actually being operated on, and there's some really weird, nefarious shit going on here. So, of course, if you show it to us, you got to use it. Morgan uses the knife, stabs the doctor in the foot, and runs away. And then at that point, for lack of a better word, mayhem breaks out. The kids all figure out that the doctor is real, and this doctor's coming, and he's zapping these kids with a cattle prod. And once they figure out it's real, all the camp counselors like, "You got to get into the main room, get into the cafeteria, come on." But Morgan and his little friend group escape, and they're trying to get out in their own way. And as time passes, I'm gonna tell the truncated version of this. We'll get into the actual ending a little later. But the truncated version is, you realize not only is there a doctor, there's multiple doctors, and the camp counselors are also in on this. The camp counselors are starting to zap the kids and knock them out and carry them into these rooms. And of course, Morgan and his friends are like, "What the fuck is going on?" They finally figure it out when they get to the main building, and they get cornered, for lack of a better word, by the camp counselors. And you come to find out, they find their files in this camp counselor building. And it says Morgan, date of birth, whatever, 84, 83, 93, whatever year it is. And it has DOD, 9/3/2023 or 2022. And he's like, "What's DOD?" Date of death. Morgan drowned, died. And he consistently has this nightmare about drowning and his grandfather pulling him out of a pool. And he also has this nightmare vision when his grandfather actually died right before his grandfather expired from the heart attack. He says to Morgan, "I finally get to see you again." Now, Morgan never understands that, and it's kind of haunting his dreams. His grandfather saying that to him. It never makes sense. Finds his file, and it says DOB, date of birth, and DOD, date of death. And what the fuck? And his friend Pilar, the little girl who's with him, she has a file, and it also says date of birth, date of death. What the fuck is going on? Long story short, we find out that all these kids at all this entire camp have all died, and their parents did not want to let them go. So these people have found a way to basically orchestrate clones of a certain kind. They're not robots. They say very openly they're not robots, but they're like clones of the original people. But they don't grow like normal children. They don't advance. So they have to come back to the summer camp every year. And while they're there, they get knocked out unconscious, which is usually done through hot chocolate they make them drink. It takes them out unconscious, and they grow them a couple inches, make them a little bigger. So each year at camp, they get a little bigger, a little bigger, a little bigger. And they also tell them, like, "Hey, when you outgrow this, you'll go to a college camp." Same kind of thing. It'll be like a college program, and we'll continue to advance. So you'll be like a normal person, but you're just going to continue. We're going to have to like physically go in and make you bigger, stronger, whatever. And basically, this is a story about how all these kids have been roped together into this camp, and their parents didn't want to let them go after dying. And so these people have orchestrated a way to clone them and bring them back Give them their memories, give them their lives back, and give them the parents who didn't want to let their children die. And that's the big twist. This has all been orchestrated as like some big experiment so dead children can be resurrected, for lack of a better word. And of course, that blows everybody's mind.
It's a wild twist. And this movie just keeps pulling you inward with questions. I really loved the technique that they used, which was like at every turn that you go, why the fuck would they do that? Like you really question decisions. So the first why the fuck was, why the fuck are they sending Morgan to camp right after his grandfather died? Like right after. I go, that doesn't even make any sense. So then you're immediately like, this doesn't line up with like the parents here. It really doesn't. Like you don't get it. And so that like pulls you in. And I'm like, okay, that's not making a ton of sense. Then the stuff with CJ starts happening. And at first it's like a little bit of bullying, but then they like almost immediately reintegrate the two of them together. And I go, you should at least change fucking cabins. Like don't make him, he's rooming with CJ. It's him and CJ in a cabin all by themselves. And you're like, Jesus fucking Christ, at least switch fucking cabins because he's being shitty to this kid. I'm like, that doesn't even make any fucking sense. Then CJ tries to fucking drown him, and you're like, okay, so we're calling mom and dad, right? And they're like, we don't give up on kids here. And I'm like, bull fucking shit. I go, this is a modern movie. It's not the 19. If it was the 1980s and they said that, I go, okay, it makes sense, right? Because they're really just like their parents are just dumping their kids here anyway. Like whoever CJ's parents are, they don't want to fucking deal with him. So you're going, what the fuck? It doesn't make sense. And then this doctor shit starts happening. At first, you're not sure if it's like a hallucination because Morgan's had hallucinations. The opening scene, the opening shot of the movie is Morgan having a crazy hallucination where he's laying in bed and all of a sudden like this wound opens up in his stomach and it starts like gushing water and he's having kind of a drowning nightmare. And I was like, what the fuck does that even mean? Everything made me go, what the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? In a good way though. But I was like, I was on the breaking point with the CJ shit. I was like, in a modern day movie, this makes no sense. So what is actually going on? There has to be something going on here. So it piques your interest. And it turns out, Damon, the CJ stuff is important to the story because he's not just bullying Morgan. He's malfunctioning. This is like a pilot program. This camp is full of kids. I don't know however many kids are there, 50, 60 to 100, something like that. And this is the first run of it all. This is the beta run of all these weird cyborg hybrids that kind of like, if you're listening to our Alien Earth recaps, very similar to the hybrids in Alien Earth. Spoiler alert, that's happening if you're not listening to our Alien Earth episodes. And so what they're learning is that right around the puberty stage, which is about where CJ is. By the way, my kid's name also CJ, so that's fucking it's really fucking eerie how he looks and acts or he looks and has the same name as my kid. And at right around the puberty stage, they start to turn violent and they don't know why. So that's why they're not giving up on him. They can't. These parents have paid who knows how much money to have these kids, their kids recreated. They have to fix him, and they don't know how to do it. So that's when Morgan sees him, splayed open on an operating table because they make sure that they can bleed and sweat, and they want them to be just like real kids. So like he looks at him and it's like his guts are all torn open. He doesn't understand what's really going on there. They're working on CJ. They're trying to figure out why he's turning violent, but it's becoming a problem. And there's kind of this, and so once everything is like laid out, there's this other overarching dread of like, well, these kids can't get out of this camp because once they turn a little pubescent, they are going to go psycho on your ass. Like, and there's kind of side scenes with people who run this shit, and they're just like, you need to get this shit under control. If you don't, we're screwed. And we cannot do the thing where we just take all these kids completely offline. That's not going to fly. A bunch of kids disappearing, that doesn't make any sense. We can't do it. So it's such a like keep you on the hook with by continually making you ask questions of why these people are making these choices. Some of these choices are infuriating, but not in a bad way, in a way that makes me go, there's a reason why. And as the layers get unfolded, you see all of the reasons. And Damon, there is one important and I have a question for you because you have seen this movie twice. There's one counselor who is in on it, but is helpful to the children, and that is Franklin. Did you see something on your second viewing that made more sense why Franklin was helping them? Because from my one viewing, the impression was, oh, Franklin just has a conscience. He's just not feeling good about what's happening here.
That's always the way I took it in both viewings, is that
Okay.
Franklin doesn't feel good about this particular science experiment. He doesn't feel great that these kids have died and they're being resurrected and they don't obviously know they died. Like they're just being kids again. Like they clearly don't know they've been brought back to life in some kind of weird scientific way. And so he feels guilty about it. He feels bad for them. And so at one point when Morgan and his friend Pilar break in and they find the files and they confront them all and saying, hey, what the fuck? Like we're dead? And Franklin's the one who's just like, I'll tell you whatever you want to know. Like I'll tell you the truth. Because what they end up doing is whenever there is a situation where one of the kids does find out, because apparently this has happened before, they just wipe their memory. They wipe out like the last
Yeah.
day or the last 2 days or whatever, so it kind of goes back to normal. And Franklin's like, I'll give you a choice. You can go back under and we'll wipe your memory, or you can keep this knowledge and I'll tell you exactly what you want to know. Because he feels guilty. Because I think one key to this whole thing that they do mention when Morgan and Pilar kind of start figuring things out that they're dead. They're like, are we robots? And he's like, not exactly. Like you're not robots, but you're not human. So like there is organic matter. Like when you see CJ splayed out on the medical table, like he's got a heart and they got his rib cage open. So like these aren't robots. They're not androids just programmed to be kids. They're humans. They don't get into the minutia about like, are
Yeah.
they grown as kids and implanted
We're
with
going to leave
chips.
that to the side. Yeah, we're not going to worry about that for this movie.
But it reminded me a lot of a movie that I love from the late '90s called Disturbing Behavior, and it was during that late '90s horror period of like The Faculty and movies like that. And that movie deals with high school kids in this small town in this island near Washington State, and like the kids are all basically being kids. They're getting rambunctious, they're getting lashing out, and they're doing crazy shit. And the parents are getting concerned, and so there's a doctor in town who basically starts implanting kids with a chip that turns them into model citizens. They are like great students and good for the community. But what they start to find out, much like this movie, and I have a hard time believing there wasn't some inspiration drawn from Disturbing Behavior. When the kids get horny or get turned on, they get violent. They kind of lash out. Like they stop behaving nicely. And they're like, I just want a bone. And so like we're gonna. So like I think there's got to be some inspiration from this, because in this movie, it's like when they get to a certain level of adolescence and they kind of get into puberty and they kind of get in that 13-year-old range, something kind of clicks on and they kind of become aggressive and violent and they start transforming. And they do mention on the phone call when the lead doctor is talking, he said that it's happening at all of our camps. So apparently this is like there's multiple camps of these where this is going on, and they're like, this is happening everywhere. Like, what is going on? We got to put a stop to this. So it's kind of a layered thing, because there's part of you that feels guilty and sad for Morgan and his friends who are actually dead, being resurrected against their will, clearly, because they didn't get a choice in this matter. And they're being given back their personalities and their parents and everything. And so they're being given back life, but not totally, because they don't have free will. They don't have choice. And they're being told, like, hey, you're going to come here every year and we're going to make you grow an inch. And when you go home, you'll have longer hair, or you'll have you'll be an inch taller or 2 inches taller, whatever. And so, like, it's a very weird, like, situation. But then you tack on the extra layer, which is, at a certain age, you become aggressive and violent. And what happens? How can we, like, why is this happening? It's a multi-layered story, but also very easy. Like, once you get to that point in the story, it is easy to follow. Like, you can figure it out once they explain it. And remember, I think part of the brilliance of this movie that I really enjoyed with the writing, Patrick, we always talk about, like, you can spend a lot of time just through exposition explaining things, and it gets
Yeah.
kind of redundant, and you almost like, oh, come on. What I love about this movie is when Franklin and the other people start explaining to the kids what's happening to them, these kids are like 10, 11 years old. So you kind of have to like dumb things down a little bit. You can't just be like, well, we go into the mitochondrial, they're not getting into like the nitty gritty of what they're doing. but they tell them in a way that they can understand as a 10 or 11-year-old kid, which informs the audience. Like, they're not doing it in like an expositional way that wouldn't make sense. Like, they're not sitting around the office and the doctor is talking to one of the camp counselors being like, we know these kids are all clones and we've given them back their memories. Like, why are you talking about this to each other? Don't you already know that? In this movie, it makes sense why they're giving you the exposition, which is they're telling the kids why and what's happening to them. And so by extension, the audience learns.
Exactly. And by the way, for any of the burgeoning writers out there, if you have a scene that explains the science of it all, and that science of it all is not entertaining, wipe the fucking scene out. You don't need it. And this movie did not need it. I don't care about how they make them work. It's irrelevant. He's just explaining to two 10-year-olds what they're here for. You're some sort of weird robot hybrid thing, and we're here to tinker with you. Every summer we make you a couple inches taller, we make you a little bit older so you can grow into an adult for your family. But the only way to do that is to have you come here to this camp and we put you to sleep and we grow you a little bit. That's what we do here. Simple as kept. That's really just the why of you're here, not the how. The how is very uninteresting, honestly. 99.9% of times, the how it works is not going to be interesting for your script. They avoided that here. You get an entertaining script or an entertaining movie because they avoid the how of it. The how is not important. It's not interesting. You're here to sit down and just let a movie take over. You're not here for you want to go to a science class? Go to a science class. No bones about that. Go learn how things work. But if you're going, hey, I want to watch something supernatural, something horrific, something genre-tastic, don't worry about the how. I don't care how a wizard does their magic. I just want to see the magic. Just show it to me. Show me the magic. The how ruins it. It really does, right? For instance, if there's a metaphor for you, Damon. If we went to the magic castle together and we saw the most amazing magic trick we've ever seen in our lives, we're like, holy shit, how the hell did he pull a card out of Damon Martin's eyelid? I just watched him do it. If then he turned around and told us exactly how he did it, the magic is gone, isn't it? So that's just a little note for all you burgeoning writers out there. Don't explain the magic. Let the magic happen. Your audience is buying into it. Damon and I bought into it. Now, one thing back on track here. Franklin did say, I can put you to sleep right now, and you guys I can wipe your memory from the past couple days, and you'll be all part of it again. But again, Franklin doesn't really believe in what's going on in this place. He's had a change of heart. He's the one counselor who's like, I don't want to be part of this anymore. So I think he said, or you can help change things. Damon, what exactly did he do here? Because the final shot of the movie, we knew because we got a long storyline with CJ that CJ could become violently aggressive. What the final shot is Pilar covered in blood coming at the lead camp counselors with an axe, and she's ready to slay them because clearly she's getting to the point where she's about ready to start slaying fools. So was that Franklin going, I'm gonna turn what's happening here, which is the kids that as they start to enter puberty, they can become psychopathic killers. How does he point them in the right direction, Damon?
So I don't know that it's necessarily Franklin pointing them in the right direction. The way I always took it on the two viewings I've had, one is like coming of age. Like when you come to a certain age, you just start getting more aggressive. And we saw the evolution in CJ when he went from like tripping Morgan and kind of pointing and laughing to literally chucking him in the lake and trying to fucking drown him while he just absolutely wails on this kid, beating the shit out of him. And that's all in like a 24-hour period. Like he just escalates it that much. The way I wondered and the way I took it was I wondered if the actual knowledge of what you are or what you become or what you're becoming kind of frazzles their brain. Remember, these are little kids. These are 10-year-old kids, and they're supposed to act and behave and be treated like 10-year-old kids. And I can't help but wonder, like in Pilar's case, when he says, do you want to go back under, or do you want to like retain the truth and know what's happening to you? And clearly Pilar and Morgan are both like, we want to stay, like we want to know what we are. We want to continue to live the lives we've been living, but we want to know what we are. We want to participate. We want, hey, make me another inch taller. They want to participate. They don't want to just be like, they just won't want to be bystanders in this whole thing. And the way I took it, and I could be totally wrong, by the way I took it was that knowledge kind of frazzles their brain just as much as puberty does. And so Pilar just snaps. Like she just, like the knowledge that she's actually dead and this is not really her, much less her body, much less her personality. This has all been programmed into a clone of sorts. That just also makes her snap, and she just goes on this killing rampage, and the aggression and the violence comes out of her, much like when they go through puberty. That's the way I took it. I could be totally wrong.
The only follow-up I would have to that is what happens to Morgan. So clearly Morgan decides I'm not going to have my memory wiped, but then he goes back and goes to camp with everybody else, right? So as the end of the camp for him is he gets to see his friends again. They're all fine, but they've all been wiped of the last few days of all the chaos, and they are kind of back to normal. He's like, I'm so glad to see you guys. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, we've been hanging out this whole time. They don't have any recollection of all the chaos that just happened, but he does. And then even the one camp counselor, what's his name? Oh shit, Kazwar. Kazwar comes up and he's all bloody and bruised from the battle, right? He's this big hulking dude that got beat to shit by these kids because, they were smarter than him. Morgan and Kazwar have this moment where he's like, oh, like what happened to you? And he's like, oh, I fell hiking. And he's like, you sure it wasn't a boating accident? Because he knows he got fucking hit over the head with a kayak. So why does everyone in the camp, or the counselors, the people that are actually like running the show, why are they okay with Morgan not having his memory erased? Or is it that only, okay, maybe I'm trying to work this out in my head. Maybe only Franklin knows, but he's telling Morgan, go pretend like everything's fine and that you've had your mind erased. You think that's what he did?
I think that's what he did. I don't think they knew they didn't wipe him, because when you look at the look on the camp counselor's face, he kind of like smirks, like, huh, like, almost like a,
right. Like why do you know that?
Yeah, so like I think it's because remember when Franklin has that conversation with Pilar and Morgan, it's just them in the room. He just tells them like, hey, if you want to stay and know. And my assumption, my estimation of this is that the information overloads their brain, but everyone's going to process it differently. For Morgan, it seems like he processed it in a way that, like, I'm happy, I'm alive, I get to see my parents again, I get to have my friends back, I'm alive. He kind of takes it in like a joyful way, even though like he's learning that he died, he drowned and everything, but like he's like, oh well, I have a second chance. Is the way I took it. Now, we don't learn about like how Pilar died and like, what the trauma was with that. But my guess is on her flip side is like, it doesn't compute in her head that she's being brought back to life and resurrected from a dead body, a dead child. And that, much like puberty, just snaps her. So like, yeah. I think Morgan accepts it because he's like, oh, my friends, I get to go back to camp. And like, I was actually starting to have a good time. He gets to go back with the knowledge of like, I get to be friends with everybody. Whereas it seems like Pilar was like, what the fuck did you do? And then, the brain snaps because like, and when the lead doctor's on the phone with his leadership hive or whatever it is, and they say this is happening everywhere. Like when they get to a certain point, they're wigging out basically. They're snapping and they're getting violent. We got to get this shit under control. And he's like, all right, I understand. We'll figure it out. And then like as he looks up, there's Pilar covered in blood with a butcher knife in her hand or an axe in her hand, and she comes for him. So the way I took it, and maybe we'll get the writer on one day, we'll talk to him, but the way I took it was Morgan accepted it. He's like, cool, I'm alive. I got a second chance at life. But it seems like Pilar was like, because if you watched him in the cabin when they get their files and everything, like Pilar seems as stunned, but she's kind of always got like this almost like dead-eyed look on her face, like what the fuck? And I kind of took it as Morgan accepts it and kind of like moves on, like, hey, I get to be a kid again. And she's kind of like, the fuck did you do? And then her brain goes haywire. That's the way I took it.
Yeah, maybe if I was to criticize anything about this movie, is I just needed a little bit more understanding of what Pilar was going through prior to showing up to camp. Maybe she was going through nothing, and that's what I needed to
And
know.
and also remember, I'm just being honest, girls advance at a much faster rate than boys
Yes.
do.
So I assumed then the way I took it was, oh, she's like hitting puberty sooner than him, even though
And
they're about the
that's
same
the
age.
and
Yeah.
that's the other thing. Like she could just be coming of that age where she's just advancing quicker than the
Yeah,
boy
it
is.
just
And so
seemed to
she's
happen the very next day. That appears to be what it was, and I don't know if I missed some detail that was showing that she's about to kind of cross over to the puberty stage. I don't know if I missed that detail or not, but that was something I assumed. I was like, oh, okay, well she's a girl, so they mature sooner. But boy, she literally matured the next day, and it's like, okay, the next day she's a murderous robot.
and you got to kind of remember like that night, if she remembers that night, like they had to run for their lives. They're knocking over camp
Yeah,
counselors. They're getting violent to save themselves. So like, I kind of wonder if that didn't just kind of almost like activate that in her. Like she was going through like a
maybe.
very harrowing survival situation. And also girls advance faster than boys. And so like, maybe that was just like the switch that got
Yeah,
flipped.
maybe.
I mean, listen, you're right. Like, if you're going to criticize, like, that's not totally clear. But at the same time, they give you enough breadcrumbs with the CJ character and, like, how he, like, basically becomes this
Right. You know
violent
why.
dickhead.
It's
Yeah.
you know
So,
what's going on. Yeah.
like, they could have easily done it with one of the other kids. I think they did Pilar just because she was one of the main kids you knew. And
Hmm.
when she shows up with blood covered on her, they could have just easily done it with Morgan. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the
Yeah.
kid you knew. Because there was this camp was like 60 kids, and you only really get to know like five of them. You get to know Morgan, his little friend group, and then CJ, who's a dickhead, and you get to know Pilar. And then Pilar's roommate's there for like 10 minutes. So you don't
Yeah.
really know the other characters. There's kids everywhere, but you don't really know the kids. So I think they just did it like, we got to pick a kid we know, and it's kind of a little bit more sad and tragic and tough if it's Pilar, because Pilar and Morgan had grown close. They were kind of cute and like, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend, but for like 10-year-olds, you know, that
Yeah.
kind of, so for it to be her, it's almost like, oh man, like how tragic. Like she wigged out and now she's fucking going on a killing spree.
Yeah, and also too, like maybe she, you establish very early on, and the motif keeps going that Morgan is having nightmares, and those are clearly glitches in his memory. They're glitches in his memory of when he was alive and drowned, and so he keeps kind of replaying that a lot as his stress levels go high, and he's a very like awkward inward kid. Pilar is the opposite. She is outgoing. She is not shy. She comes up to him. She talks to him. She initiates a lot of conversations. She's highly social. She's very different from him. And I think it has probably a lot to do with like how her parents are raising her. So maybe, just maybe, she's totally fine coming into this camp. I don't know that. You only have so much time to examine these things. But when she learns what's going on with her, she's like, "Oh, really? Fuck all that." Like maybe
Yeah.
that's kind of how I took it.
Yeah, but I mean, and I think like ultimately the idea being that like once you reach a certain stage or something goes haywire, like you're no longer a kid, you become a violent psychopath, for lack of a better word. We saw how quickly it happened with CJ because he advanced quickly.
It
Like
did.
he was a bullying little kid. Like I said, he tripped and pointed and laughed at Morgan 1 second. The next time he's literally chucking him in the fucking lake to drown him, and then tackling a kid and just absolutely beating the living shit out of him.
Yeah, that's
So
true. Yeah, it
that
does happen
escalation
like at a snap. Yeah.
yeah, so like I said, the way I took it was like, yes, girls do advance quicker than boys, but also I think just maybe that knowledge, like just knowing that what she was, like, well, Morgan accepted was like, oh, cool, like I get to be a kid again, or for lack of a better word, that was kind of what he did. He's like, I get to see my friends again, I get to be a kid again. And you just wonder, like, did Pilar go the other direction, which is like, what the fuck did you do? you know?
Yeah, so it is there. When you think about the CJ escalation, that makes sense. He goes from one day to the next, he's actually hyper violent. So that does make sense to me. That it cleans itself up pretty nicely.
And
when
it
you
is,
think about
and
it
it
like
is
that.
the next day because that
It
night
is the next
when it
day.
happens. It's the next day when Pilar snaps. So it's kind of almost like
Right.
in the same CJ way, she just goes full bore.
Yeah.
I'm gonna murder everyone.
Yeah, when I think about how CJ went from one night to the next day, that makes sense. So yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So all bases covered. And again, it was just a minor thing where I was like, wait a minute, but how exactly, but you don't know anything about Pilar other than she's a nice girl. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then and then the next day she's covered in blood swinging an axe.
But I loved the creativity and the originality of this twist to find out that this is
Yes.
really, in a way, it's a tragic story. All these kids died. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
all died in some unnatural way. No kid dies of natural causes at 12 years old. So every one of these kids died in some unnatural way, whether it was sickness like a cancer or in Morgan's case, he drowned. Like all these kids died tragically. And in theory, they're doing something good by bringing them back and giving their parents like their children back. Because what's the old saying go? Like no parent should outlive their child. Like that's a very
Oh
real
yeah.
thing. Um, but then you think about like the science of it all. Like just because you could doesn't mean you should.
Hmm.
And things go haywire, and you're like, did you really think about this? Like the Jurassic Park thing. Like, did you really think this through when you decided to make fucking dinosaurs? Did you really think this through when you decided to make clones of children and like put their
Yeah.
personalities back in there? And like, did you really think this whole thing through? So I love the originality of it. When I say a summer camp slasher, sort of. It is sort of set up, but that's what I love about this movie, because if you just told me it's a summer camp slasher and I watched the first like half hour, I'd be like, all right, this feels pretty generic. I mean, it's well acted and well plotted, but it just feels like every other. Even the campfire tell, like you're telling me there's an
Right.
evil guy out there named the Doctor. All right, whatever. When you get to that twist and you figure out what's going on, a light bulb goes on. You're like, oh, you remember the grandpa saying, I get to see you again. You remember why he was having this vision of him drowning, because he actually drowned. All the puzzle pieces fit into place, and every single person, and I'm sure you did this too in your head, maybe not verbally, but you all went, oh,
Oh
I
yeah, it's a
got it
lot of
now.
oh yeah,
And,
and I like
and
and I like what I got when I got to the I was like, oh okay, I like that.
I just like the originality of it. Like, I didn't see that coming. A million miles away, I did not see that coming. Like, I knew there was some weird shit going on, but I didn't know what. And as you said, this movie makes you question things in a good way. But then when you
Hmm.
get to the actual reveal, you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, what a great original idea.
Yeah, Damon. I was so worried this was going to turn into Cabin in the Woods. I don't like, and I'm the sole person on earth that hates Cabin in the Woods. Everyone else seems to love it. I hated what that movie turned into. I was like, please don't turn into that. Please don't be like, this is the modern Cabin in the Woods. And luckily it wasn't. It was its own different and original idea.
You know what it felt like? And I actually do like Cabin in the Woods. I know you know that.
I
But
know, and no one else seems to agree with me on Cabin in the Woods. I hate it.
you know what this felt like? It felt like a really smart Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, it did. It had a very
You
Black
know?
Mirror vibe to it. Very, very good. We're going to get into it in a moment. Great kid performances across the board and shit. It's just like it crossed all its T's, it dotted all its I's, and it gave me something completely new to consider. It was just, I love that when a horror movie shows me something brand new.
A summer camp slasher slash technological nightmare. Like if I was going to tell you what it was without like with giving you spoilers, it is, and that's why I said it reminded me of a Black Mirror episode, because there's so many good Black Mirror episodes when you get into it, and then there's like a big reveal or a big twist. You're like, oh shit, I did not see that coming. That is
Maybe,
kind of the point
maybe,
of Black Mirror.
maybe I would tell people, oh, it's like if Black Mirror had a summer camp episode. I think that's what I'd say, because you don't want to say what, because Black Mirror can go in a lot of different directions. I don't even want to tell them sci-fi, because I don't want to get people ready for that. So I would just be like, oh yeah, it's like if Black Mirror had a summer camp episode, and that to me would be how I would describe it to people.
I mean, my favorite episode of Black Mirror isn't even a technological episode. It's a serial killer story, and that's not even
Mhm.
tech. There's no real technology in that episode, but I love that
Right.
episode. So yeah, but that's what it reminded me of when you added in like the tech part of it.
Yes.
It did remind me of a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, and Black Mirror is a great show. So we're only comparing it to good stuff. That this
Phenomenal
gets my
show.
seal of approval.
100%. Well, Patrick, let's get into some categories. Let's kick things off as we do each and every week here on the show, and let's talk about best performance. Now, this is an ensemble cast, and you and I know when you're casting children, it can go one of two ways. really good, really, really bad. And we do our best never to just slam children performances because they're kids. I mean, come on. Like the way you are as a kid is not the way you're going to be when you're older. So we always try to treat it with kid gloves. No pun intended. But to their credit, I thought everyone was casted pretty well in this movie. So Patrick, who gets your best performance for Marshmallow?
I like this kid cast. I think they all did a really good job. Nobody stood out to me. There was no young Nicolas Cage award nominees happening here. So my best performance went to our lead, Q Lawrence, who plays Morgan. When the movie is on your shoulders, I gotta believe it. I gotta believe that you're the one. I gotta believe that you're meek and that you're bullied. It makes and also too, I mean, this is in the writing, but there's never a moment where like all of a sudden he turns tough. It's like he's that kid. He's just kind of trying to grow into the situation the way he would. He doesn't have to rise to some sort of heroic heights or anything like that. He plays it his way. He plays it the Morgan way, and he climbs the ladder and achieves his goals in this movie as Morgan. And I like that. It's almost like a Superman idea. It's like Superman's not really supposed to change throughout the story. Superman is Superman when you meet him, and Superman's Superman when you end. But everybody around him is sort of like, oh, okay, I get why you are the way you are. That's Morgan in this. He's just freed from his own kind of chains of anxiety and stress. It's like, oh, okay, I don't have to be anxious anymore. I know what I am now, and now I can enjoy my life, and I can be a kid. That's what you want. And I wanted to be able to root for the lead in this movie, and I was holding my breath because I was like, shit, this is a movie with little kids. We'll see if this works. It really did work, and it's because of Q Lawrence.
I can't tell you what 10 or 11-year-old kids act like now, but I know what 10 or 11-year-old kids acted like when I was 10 or 11, and this was a pretty genuine performance. I was super impressed. It was a kid movie written for a kid, acted like a kid, and I thought Q Lawrence did a great job, so I agree. Phenomenal performance. So for me, I had a couple different options here I was going to go with because I actually really do like Corbin Burnson, but he's in this for a very, very brief moment, and also Alicia Reiner, who plays Morgan's mom. She was the only other actor I knew from previous roles. She was in
Yeah.
Orange is the New Black and a couple other things I've seen her in, but I didn't know anyone else in this movie. But the one that I ended up giving and I actually do know Georgia Wiggum. She was in Punisher season 2. She's been in a couple things, so I did know who she was. But I ultimately gave my best performance to Pearson Fode as Kazwar, the
Oh yeah.
jocular asshole camp counselor. We talked about the stereotypical camp counselors. Kazwar is the
Yeah.
stereotypical working out, occasionally smoking some pot, boning the other camp counselors. He's like the jocular, popular, good-looking guy, which, by the way, I just found this out tonight before the show. This dude's 33.
Oh man. Putting all of us to shame.
Yeah, he does not look 33 by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
But he does, and what I love about this character, and this is classic horror movie, is that the biggest, baddest, most muscular, whatever, he's the one who gets beat up the most. He's the one who gets he gets smacked with a kayak, he gets tripped and fall, he gets smacked with a bat or whatever, like because the one kid hits him, like he gets the shit kicked out by these little 10-year-old kids, and he's like the big, strong, burly one. I love that. And he just takes it all with a grain of salt. And like even that end scene when Morgan says, "You sure you didn't get hit by a boat?" And he's just like, "You little shit." Like you just see it looking. He plays it straight, and he does a really good job of like giving you that like jocular camp counselor asshole. And he plays it great.
Yeah, he was ripped right out of a 1980s camp movie, like 100%. I was like, damn, like it's crazy how good they got it. Like it's great writing. So there's just how the character speaks and acts and moves. It felt so authentic. It feels so familiar. It really and again, it immerses you as somebody who grew up on camp movies. It will immerse you and go, oh yeah, that's that guy that's always in the camp movies. And you want him to get his comeuppance. It's not quite that kind of movie. He does get his comeuppance, right? He kind of just gets humbled though. He's not so vicious, and nobody there really is that you want to see them die. There is one person who does, which is the lead counselor. He does, but he's also shitty. He's kind of the shitty one, and that's revealed through a couple of scenes and shit. So it's like, oh, it's good to see him get his comeuppance because he really doesn't give a shit. This Counselor Kazwar and all the other ones, their job is to make sure these kids safely get through the process that is making them better and growing them and fixing them and getting them out of there. So you don't have to root for these guys to die. And Kazwar was able to ride that line real nice.
Yeah, I know you did a good job. Patrick, next category, let's talk about our MVP, our Ken Foray MVP. Ken Foray Banana Hammock MVP Award, named after great character actor Ken Foray from the movie From Beyond, when he jumped down a flight of stairs and into a basement to kill a creature wearing nothing more than a thong bikini. If that's not an MVP performance, I don't know what is. So when it comes to Marshmallow, who gets your? Actually, I'm gonna bury the lead here. We have the same MVP, but I think for a good reason. So let's
Oh
talk
yeah.
about our shared MVP.
Our shared MVP is writer Andy Griskoviak. This guy came up with a really original idea, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly why you chose him too. We watch a lot of horror movies, Damon. I don't know. We are going to put out minimum 52 horror movies this year that you and I have sat and talked about. Never mind the ones that we watch that we don't end up talking about. 52 horror movies a year. A lot of them are the same old thing. We just talked about The Conjuring Last Rites. The same old thing. We get tired of that after a while. It becomes exhausting. And then you can hear it in our episodes. We're just like, yeah, so they did it again. They did the thing again. This ain't the same old thing. Marshmallow is a different idea. And even the way it was written, again, like I said, where it keeps kind of pulling you in a direction where you're questioning why the characters are doing what they do, why they are acting the way they act. That I mean, and some of that credit goes to the director as well, like just the pacing and the structure of it all when it ended up on screen. But that script, that idea, really, really worked.
We talked a few weeks ago. I can't remember what movie we were reviewing, but I said, has the era of the slasher just died, where people just have outgrown slasher movies, like the idea of a masked killer chasing people around, supernatural or otherwise, and you got to find a way to defeat him. And I said, if audiences have just grown too sophisticated to enjoy the old school slasher, and I really wondered, like, has the slasher died? Like, are we just not, unless it's like Scream or a new Friday the 13th or a new Halloween, where it's kind of like that embedded audience, where like, oh, I got to go see it because it's Halloween. It just seems like people aren't as in tune with slashers anymore. And I kind of came to that realization when we were talking about that. And this movie, what I love about this movie and Andy Griskoviak's writing in particular is that it is presented to you as a summer camp slasher. Literally, kids at a summer camp told a campfire tale about an evil doctor who hunts them down in the night, and then they see this evil doctor. That's as summer camp slasher formula as you could possibly imagine. But then to see how many other directions and how original the actual twists and turns and the ending of this movie are, you don't see it coming. You've never seen this before in this regard. I did mention, Disturbing Behavior has a somewhat similar premise with, using some sort of microchip to make kids better. This is a little different than that, but, similar-ish. But this is totally original, totally different, and it spins and twists and drops the slasher formula on its head. And this is what we talk about when we say you can make a good original slasher in 2025, but you got to give us something different that we haven't already seen in the 1980s or the 1990s. And I almost don't want to call this a slasher because no one really gets slashed, but it's set like that. So you have to kind of go in knowing the premise is a slasher, but the payoff is so much bigger, so much better, so much broader, and more well thought out. And that's all credit to Andy Griskoviak.
It's a situation where, and we spoke out to our burgeoning writers out there. Take a very familiar template and spin it on its head. That's exactly what they did. They said, it's a summer camp thing. Okay, but we've done that a million times. How are we going to be different? That's what you got to try and do. You got to say, I'm writing something right now that I am positioning as a slasher, but I'm trying, Damon, and it's fucking hard. I'm trying to spin it on its head. I'm trying to go, oh, I'm making a slasher, but I don't want it to be a slasher when it's all said and done. When the veil is lifted and the magic trick is presented to you, you'll go, "Whoa, okay, I didn't think it was going to be that at all." Cool. Subversion, my favorite thing in any kind of film, not just horror, any kind of film. When I sit down and I think I know what I'm getting into and I don't, and it just keeps surprising me turn after turn after turn, A plus, Damon. That's how you do it. That's how you get people excited. And that is, I guarantee you, why everybody, including the great Damon Martin, has been out there shouting to the rooftops, go see Marshmallow. It's worth your time.
Subversion of expectations and originality. And when you think about the movies we've given separately but also together our most positive reviews for, Sinners, 28 Years Later. For me, it was Weapons. I know you weren't as big of a fan of Weapons, but that's okay. Companion was another one.
Yeah,
Movies
good one.
that movies that are seemingly fitting into a format you've seen before, but then drop you on your head with something totally different. And I know a lot of people didn't work for 28 Years Later, but we talked, I don't want to rehash that episode. We said like this, to do just another 28 weeks later or 28 days later, that's not Danny Boyle and Alex Garland. You're never going to get them to do that kind of movie. And that's one of the things we applauded, because it wasn't just another zombies chasing us through the fucking city story. You could do a million of those. We knew that wasn't what they were going to do. Sinners, people are like, oh, it's From Dusk Till Dawn. Oh my God, it's so much different than From Dusk Till Dawn. The only thing it shares in common is vampires and people are drinking. That's about it. That's as broad
That's
strokes
about
as you
it.
can get. We Companion. I'm not going to get into deep, but that's another one. Totally original. Didn't see it, like really fun original story. Marshmallow absolutely fits in that category. Something that you think you know what you got, but you really don't. And when it all unravels, you're like, holy shit, I've never seen anything like this before.
It's feeling like a top tenner this year. I got to look at the list. I don't know. It could be too soon. And a few movies that are about to come out, I heard are going to knock us on our asses. I've heard that there are some movies coming we are not ready for. So I'm excited for that shit. I mean, I really am. And right near the fall season, the movie quality starts to go through the fucking roof. So I'm excited for a few more movies coming down the line. But as of right now, I think Marshmallow is a top 10 horror movie for me.
I will say, when I went to see the Conjuring movie with my girlfriend, we were watching the trailers and they played the trailer for the Black Phone 2. And we
Mhm.
liked the Black Phone. We gave that a pretty positive review
That
when
was
it
all
came
right.
out. And the Black Phone 2 trailer played, and my girlfriend was like, this just looks like a Nightmare on Elm Street ripoff. And I was like, exactly, I'm all for it. Like, give
Great.
it. Great.
We've been pining for a new Nightmare on Elm Street. Why don't you just make one over here with Scott Derrickson and see Robert Cargill? Like that sounds amazing to me that those two would want to do a Nightmare on Elm Street type movie. I can't wait for Black Phone 2.
Yeah, she told me. I was like, exactly. I was like, I'm glad you got those vibes, because that's
Yes,
exactly
please.
what I want. Yeah,
Yeah.
please sign me up for more. Patrick, next category, favorite camp horror film. Now, I'm going to tell you ahead of time that if you don't answer with one of the Friday the 13th, I'm going to pull your card and just kick you off the show, because that is your that is your favorite horror franchise. But
Yeah.
maybe you're going to surprise me here. So, Patrick, Friday the 13th, Patrick Voorhees, what is your favorite camp slasher?
Damon,
Or
it has to.
favorite camp horror? Favorite camp horror. I said, yeah.
Yeah, it is a camp horror for sure, but my favorite one, of course, was going to be from Friday the 13th, and it is Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. Some of you are moaning and groaning already, going, what? That one? Yes, that one. Damon, everything that came before Part 7 was essentially like a standard camp slasher. Tina, Tina made all the difference. Tina was a telekinetic, which you go, okay, great, you're out of ideas. You're gonna just turn her into Carrie. Yes, and it turned out to be very good. It's actually a very good story that really works. I just sat with an audience and watched it, and the audience really responded to Part 7 because it actually had a character that was interesting, instead of just there to run from Jason. She's not just there to run from Jason. She's there to work out her own shit, and Jason's getting in the way of that. And then Jason tries to get in the way of that, and she kicks the shit out of him, and it's fucking rad. If you can't appreciate that, I'm sorry. But to me, that's my favorite camp slasher. Are there better Friday the 13th movies? Yes, Part 4 is better. Of course, it's a better movie. It just is. On its face, it's gorier, it's got a pretty cohesive story and all that shit. But this one's my favorite.
Yeah, we reviewed part seven. I ended up enjoying it more than I remember enjoying it, and had a really fun time with that one. Also, rest in peace, Laura Park Lincoln.
We love you,
Sadly,
Lar.
she left us not too long ago. Yeah, I agree. That was a good one, and I had to go outside of that because like I do. I've grown to enjoy the Friday the 13th movies more since we became close friends and reviewed a lot of them on this show. But I can't just stick with what you're going with. And
Yeah.
I was digging in the tropes. I was like, oh, The Burning. I like The Burning and Sleepaway Camp. Like there's some other ones out there, but the one I remember loving, and I rewatched this within the last like 6 months, and I was like, God, I love this movie so much. I love the entire series, but this is a really good one. My number one camp horror film is none other than Fear Street 1978,
It's a good one.
which turns into basically a camp slasher film with a twist because that's what the Fear Street movies are. I love all three of the original Fear Streets. Just throw Prom Queen out, act like it doesn't exist. Fear Street 1994, Fear Street 1978, and Fear Street 1666 are so much fun. It was a blast of the trilogy. And it was I named it my number one horror film of that year because I cheated and said those three because they are really all part one of one story.
They're all interconnected. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't get to part three without having seen part one. Like you have to know, you have to see all three. And I said that was my favorite horror film of that year, and I stand by that. But part two, 1978, takes place at a summer camp, and it's so much fun. It's so authentic, and there's bullying in that story too, by the way, and the originality of how the kills happen and why the killer's out there. It's just so much fun. And if you've never seen the original Fear Street trilogy, it's on Netflix. Run, Don't Walk. It's so good. It's like 6 hours total for all three movies. Absolutely worth your time. I had a blast, but that one in particular, 1978, was just awesome.
78's rad. It's a very, very good entry. They're all good. I loved all three. I genuinely loved all three entries of Fear Street, and it does count as one movie in my opinion. You can't have one without the other. But the middle part, 1978, man, is a classic camp slasher. It's just a camp slasher done in this interesting template. They're kind of dealing with like a witch, and they're dealing with powers and shit like that. And so their slasher's real fucking crazy. And it's bloody and a gory movie. I think one of the biggest faults of the Friday the 13th franchise is not gory enough. Sometimes it every now and then you get something gory, but 78 said, no, 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 we're gonna fuck shit up.
Yeah, it's a really, and I like 94 is probably still my favorite of all of them, mostly because a lot of that just feels nostalgic because I went to school during 1994 and I
Yeah.
remember like listening to White Zombie and shit when I was in school. But I think 1978 is kind of traditionally like everyone's favorite of those three. Like if you're going to force
Yeah,
someone to pick
usually.
their favorite, 1978 seems to be the predominant favorite for most people. So it's a great movie. Patrick, next category. Can we survive this horror film? Now, this is an interesting premise because are we the camp counselors or are we the children who died and they're resurrected?
Damon, we never get a chance to be kids. This movie's all about being kids. Why not? I refuse to grow up, and I know you do too. So it's one of those things where it's like every now and then I wouldn't mind being a kid. It did make me nostalgic for sixth grade camp. I wouldn't say it was my favorite time of my entire life. Trust me, it was not. It had its good moments and its bad moments, but I was like, damn, I really want to do that. And now like, what kind of dad am I where I watch that movie and I go, man, I really want to put the kids in a summer camp.
Yeah, I think of this group of kids, I probably would end up being the kid they call Doink, but his name is Dirk. He's kind of like the
Yeah.
chubby kid, but he definitely stands up for himself, and he like eventually like basically goes like he has that great moment with Caswar where he's like fuck you, like he kind of snaps at one point. And I feel like I would be that kid. So do I survive? I mean, they all kind of survive, but it's almost, I guess, almost like the moral question is like, and I certainly would never want to put any parent in this position, but like, how could you not want this opportunity to stay alive?
Yeah.
Like I don't have kids. I know people are gonna get pissed off that I say this, but I have dogs. And my dogs are my life. Like I love my dogs. I call them my children. I love my dogs. Like love my dogs. Like you fuck with my dogs, I will go to prison to do whatever I do to get back. And if there was a way, me and my girlfriend talk about it all the time, if there was a way we could get 5 more years, 10 more years with our dogs, we would do whatever. Like we would do anything to get more time with our dogs. We love our dogs. That's the best. I mean, I don't have kids, so I can't compare it and know it's different because they're your children, literally part of you. But I can't imagine no parent would like when you think. I know there's like the morality and like, is it right to resurrect a child in this way? But what parent wouldn't want this opportunity? So I guess what I'm getting at, would we survive this horror film? Yes, because even though my parents were shitty, I didn't have good parents. I would hope that if I had good parents, they'd want to bring me back. I'm not saying I would want to be back. I'm saying like they would want to bring me back. And no one really dies. Like, I mean, CJ gets ripped up. We have no idea what happens to CJ, but we have to assume they're going to try to save him. So really, no one dies.
Yeah, no one's gonna die in this movie, right? This is not only the shitty head counselor dies. That's it, and that's the guy who was supposed to die. So the odds are good that we're gonna survive this one.
Yeah, and in a good way, in a hopefully
Yeah,
happy.
yeah, in a good way.
Although when you hit adolescence, you're gonna start fucking some shit up.
Yeah, nobody else is gonna survive your adolescence, but that's par for the course.
Yeah. Next category, and I already know the answer to this: remake, sequel, or leave it alone. That is where we take whatever movie we are reviewing and we say, should they remake it, should they sequelize it, or should they leave it alone? I'm going to answer, and I know you're going to agree with me, Patrick. This movie's set up for a sequel. The ending is Pilar showing up covered in blood, holding a knife, getting ready to attack the lead doctor slash, the leader of the camp. They are setting this up so perfectly for a sequel. Now, will we ever get a sequel for a low-budget horror film that didn't do bonkers at the box office? I have no idea. But I hope so, because the story is fun and original, and I'd kind of like to see where they go from here.
Damon, you'd be surprised. My idea is leave it alone. I know.
Really?
Yes, I know they set it up for a sequel. But what do I need out of the sequel? Add a bunch, like it's literally going to be 50 adolescent kids who are trying to rip everyone's heads off. Like that's just fucking Tuesday over here by the high school. I mean, it's so what exactly would that sequel look like? It's like I don't know. I mean, listen, if they get the money to do Marshmallow 2, I'm supporting Night 1. That's for sure. So don't take it like I'm saying I don't want to see a sequel. I'm just saying that this particular story and the way it's contained gives me no desire to see a sequel. I really like the story that was told right here.
It kind of, I know this is a weird comparison. It kind of reminds me when I watched, because I just rewatched it recently, one of my all-time favorite sci-fi films is The Terminator. And when The Terminator ends with Sarah Connor driving off and like having that hope of like, she has her baby and she's kind of reconciled with the idea that like, Skynet is going to happen. The robots are going to take over. My son is going to help save the world. You could end the movie. You don't need a sequel to that. Like they've told you the story. Like they've told you what happens, and now her kid's going to be born. It's going to save the universe, and then they kind of do a retconning new version of that with Terminator 2. Like they continue the story. It didn't need to be continued. Like they basically did was like, hey, we couldn't kill John Connor before he was born, so we're gonna send a Terminator to go after John Connor when he's a teenager. We're just gonna keep trying. And you can do 1,000 of those movies if you really wanted to. You just keep trying.
And they are trying to.
A Terminator comes back when he's 10. A Terminator comes back when he's 15. Like you just keep going. But technically you didn't need the Terminator 2, right? Like you didn't need it. It's a great movie. You didn't need it. So I guess that's kind of my point. Like you don't need it. You're right. You don't need it. But I would be kind of interested to see what they would do with it.
If James Cameron wants to do Marshmallow 2, I'm very curious. I will endorse that.
Yeah, so who knows, maybe. Final category, Patrick, is it scary? Now, this is a very interesting category because this is a very heady idea in this movie. Like this is dealing with like when you really realize what it's about, you're like, wow, this is kind of heady material. Like this is like, would you do this? Would you put yourself through this? Would you put your kids through this? That's the moral conundrum of the story. But is it actually scary? I would say no. Not in that regard. Like it's not a traditionally scary movie. There aren't even really that many jump scares in this movie. But I think the ideology behind this is kind of scary because when you think about where we're going with AI and technology, I'm not saying we're 10 years away from this or 15 years away from this, but I don't think we're that far away from somebody being like, you know what? We could create a clone and give it somebody's personality and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't think we're that far off from somebody trying it. That's scary. That part is scary to me. So in a traditional sense, did I find this really scary? No. Did I love it? Did I enjoy it? Absolutely.
Yeah, I really like this movie, and it's certainly an intriguing idea. Like it gives me pause to think like, oh, what could be? But it's kind of starts out scary. Like it starts out with some intense imagery, and there's things where it feels almost more traditionally horror, and then that stuff kind of falls to the side, and you end up in kind of intrigue and mystery and what the hell's going on, and as the layers reveal themselves, they get less and less supernatural and more like, wait, but there's like some mechanics to what's happening here. There's actually some kind of like Cabin in the Woods. It's like, no, there's actually like a technical purpose for everything that you're seeing. And so in my opinion, this is not a scary movie, but it'll start scary. It'll just terrify you at the implications.
Yeah, it's so original. It's so fun. Like I
Yeah,
can't
it's a great
recommend this
movie.
one enough. It's a really fun movie, and so yeah, like you're gonna go see The Conjuring. You're gonna go see Sinners. You're gonna go see 28 Years Later because those are big blockbuster, studio films. Seek out Marshmallow. It is worth your
Yeah.
time. It is worth the rental cost or the cost of buying it on VOD. It is absolutely worth your time, and it's a really fun one. And I hope our little podcast can shine a brighter light on this show so more people go see it. That is our episode for this week, Patrick. Of course, we'll be back next week with another episode of the show. We got a lot of big movies coming up September, October. We're getting into Halloween season, so of course we're going to have a lot of big horror movies coming up. We already mentioned The Black Phone 2. That comes out in October, so of course we'll be reviewing that. So stay tuned. Obviously, check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course over on our YouTube channel. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead and find us on YouTube, and you can like and subscribe to us on there. You can also find us on our own website, rewindofTheLivingDead.com. We post the episodes of the podcast along with trailers, news, other reviews that you won't find on the podcast, like written reviews. So go over to the website, rewindofTheLivingDead.com, and check that out. And also our Patreon, patreon.com/rewind of the living dead. If you want to support your guys, support the show. It's not expensive. We promise we're not going to ask for very much, but you'll get early access to all of our episodes. You will get bonus episodes you won't get anywhere else. You'll get our Alien Earth recaps, amongst other things. So it is totally worth your time, totally worth your couple bucks a month that you're going to give to us to support the show, but you get all kinds of cool shit for signing up. So patreon.com/rewind the living dead. You got questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review, hit us up anytime on email, rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That's livingdead@gmail.com, or find us on social media. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead. We are on Instagram, we are on Twitter/X, and we are on Facebook. And you can also find us on our own personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And as always, want to say a big thank you to everyone that tunes in the show. We'll be back next week with another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you then.
Peace.